Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we are back to another recording of Shadowverse. Today is Wednesday, September 8th. Again, starting a little later. Yeah, really nothing to say there. I think we could probably also do the accountability section about that much too. Is like, I have about 3 more completion marks on Binding of Isaac Rebirth, which there definitely could be a law of diminishing returns there, where I'm just spending significant amounts of time just attempting to get those last few completion marks, which don't really even matter because they're just going to unlock items that we probably won't even ever see. There's really not a lot going on. Let's see. I guess you keep everything the same here as far as the rerolls. Let's come over here and open a pack, and then we'll jump in. Yep. On top of playing Binding of Isaac Rebirth, I'm still just trying to teach myself how to use Kodi, which, yeah, there is definitely some complication to it. Just the second you launch the app, it should feel much more wizard setup in its design. It should have wizards, frankly, and it doesn't, to help you figure out how to set up what folder the music and the movies and the TVs are all in, and just kind of explain, here's the kind of files we're looking for, here's what you can do to better optimize that if you care about that. And there are some weirdnesses, certainly, as far as just the fact that you seem to be able to kind of very easily crash Kodi with stupid things like corrupt or bad subtitle files, like things that really should be their own processes and should not be able to crash crash the whole app. But yeah, I've been messing with music to just see how that works, and yeah, you can install a visualizer to make it look fancy. You can adapt the settings a little bit so it automatically goes to full screen viewing playing mode when you play in audio, because by default, and I think some of these defaults are the wrong way to go about it, but by default it just plays music in the background and then leaves you to potentially just browse Kodi when there's really not much you could do while music is playing. Like, if you go and start a movie or a TV show, it's gonna skip over the music. There are plugins for games and things like that, so maybe there's a way to get the interface to work where you would potentially have yeah, I guess you could potentially have a scenario where you're playing music in the background while you're also playing a game. But yeah, as a full screen, you can control it via game controller concept. There's things that really just don't make sense. Let's see. Use that, and then let's see. Do this one, and then do this one. Play that. And can we evolve? No, so we'll just attack, attack, and attack. Yeah. There's like exactly one lyric add-on you can install the Kodi that will try to download synchronized lyrics from websites so that it is actually doing a karaoke style lyric playing concept, but it is failing fairly miserably to be set up the right way by default, because it just pops up in an annoying screen when you then have to go into the menu and tell it, hey, don't pop up this box, just make it invisible and show the lyrics as text in front of on top of the visualizations. And then it also pops up notifications when in the many instances in which it's going to fail to get the synchronized lyrics or lyrics. You can in metadata files, and I'm trying to figure out if Music B really is going to be worth it in this case, to put, you can put lyrics inside the metadata of a music file, but I don't know if you can put synchronized lyrics, something that Kodi would understand, that has the time code that says, hey, this plays here. Tell me what to do, please. This'll be over quick. Let's see. You hit this one, and then you hit this one. I just want to fill the emptiness. Then we'll go ahead and just evolve one. And hit that. So yeah, there is this a lot of talk about using a software called Music Brains per card to better label and sort music files. I have never gotten it to work. I'm not sure anybody has ever gotten it really to work. It's too complicated. And there's kind of less metadata you can have in an MP3 than you can in a video anyways. So you're not using something like Tiny Media Manager. I wish there was a program, just a variation of Tiny Media Manager or an update to Tiny Media Manager that would handle MP3s, because that is a really nicely optimized software that is idiot proof, where you just click 4 buttons in the top. It's just like click 1, click 2, click 3, click 4, and you are done. At that point, there's nothing else to worry about. 100% string and 0% fluff. Okay. Let's go ahead and evolve this. Do this. I didn't do that quite right.
The time to awaken is here. Watch as I wind and wind. I'll live again.
Alright, there we go. That should set us up nicely. But yeah, I really wish there was just in a way Tiny Media Manager would handle. I wish it would just handle music files instead of just video files. That would be nice, and it would reduce what is a growing number of softwares. It's like 3 or 4 softwares. Actually, it's probably closer to 5, because I'm also using like 2 picture editors. I haven't tested it yet, but I did find out that Kodi also handles comic book CBZ comic book files, so maybe it would work well with that. Certainly would make an argument to move away from Comic Rack, since that software, while it was the best software by far, it's also a completely dead software that the entire website, last time I looked, has been shut down. Completely abandoned project.
I just want to fill the emptiness.
So maybe that works. It also handles RSS feeds, so maybe the version of Beyond Pod, which I've been using for years on my cell phone, maybe I should just move that over to Kodi also. Like, it handles RSS feeds for like podcasts, so I could see a split there, and using it just for the audio podcast, and then the RSS feeds for text stay on Beyond Pod. But yep, ideally in technology you would want to find one bit of software that just can do it all. Like, there is a slight thought process that you can have a master of all trades, or jack of all trades, and master of all trades at the same time. Let's see.
Hostile life form detected. Everything was a lie. Terminating hostile life
Killed
form.
that, I guess.
If I were...
Thy little canary. Completing termination sequence.
So yeah, I've been messing around with that. I decided to kind of abandon the extended cable smart nodes to filter for extra content warnings, for the reason that A, it's not really standard, it's not MPAA, but also B, because some of the letters they use are on top of other letters, so it's almost practically impossible to use that system as it's written. Like, because you would have to, I don't even know what you would have to do. You'd have to figure out some trick there as far as how can you check to see if something has the letter L in it, but in one case, but not in other cases, which I believe it was the letter L that was confusing the issue somewhat. They did not think their system through as well. At least for it to be compatible with just a simple text search. 41 damage. That was a ridiculously high amount of damage. So yeah, I have the standard US TV rating system of dialogue, language, sex and violence, fantasy violence, and educational initiative as labels. And that should be good enough. Let's see.
100% string and 0% fluff.
Okay.
Hostile
Do
unit
this.
confirmed.
Need to do this.
And the lies.
A spin and a twirl and out. There's our puppy to get.
There's no other way. There's no retreat.
Begin.
Okay, well,
Termination sequence.
seems like we might win here. But as I'm talking about what I'm doing as side projects here, the thing I'm not talking about is scheduling videos, which once again has completely fallen. Okay. I've got this.
Gold again?
Sleep.
My dreams will become finally.
Alright, well, let's start going through the video game news since I don't really have
Sleep enveloped in serenity.
since we really have nothing else to say. I did some tweaks on tweaks on the web peak, so I'm now showing the right side since we regained those pixels, and I chopped off the bottom part a little bit so when the hover link happens, which you can't do anything about that in Chrome, that will still work fine. Or it'll show for me, but it will be chopped off and cropped for you. Yes, and so that'll be a little less distracting, I think. So here we have a game on Steam called Protoball, and yeah, see now when I'm hovering on like a link here, I see the bottom 20 pixels of the screen. You don't. Now that would potentially create a situation on a web peak where if there really was something 20 pixels down here, like right about here, you can see just the tip of my mouse cursor up, but I can go all the way down. So if there was something at the very, very bottom of a web page that needed to be shown, that would kind of suck, but chances of that happening are almost zero. As for what Protoball looks like, it looks like it's a Rocket League, except for you have people in skin-tight bodysuits. Which, yeah, there might be something there, but also it very possibly could be nothing. It's online PvP within that purchases free to play, and I think that's probably the wrong direction to go for a game like that. Although Rocket League did go free to play, it also kind of took its sweet time to go to free to play. Let's see, the National Video Game National Video Game Museum has this retweet from someone. I've decided to donate my one-of-a-kind copy of Planet of the Apes for the Atari 2600 to the National Video Game Museum USA, where it will be on permanent display. I collect to preserve, not to make money. And I haven't seen a lot of National Video Game Museum's tweets lately. They don't really tweet that often. And you can see some of the items they're showing off as like vintage paperwork and things that are actually more like likely to only have a few copies, whereas a sealed copy of Nintendo 64, Mario 64, is not really that rare, and it being sealed probably doesn't make any sense. Yeah, the last thing I had even seen them tweet was this Free Guy advertisement, basically. I guess it's somewhat down to personal preference whether you want to see a lot of tweets from a video game museum or a museum in general. Like, I could see weekly tweets being just about the right timing, and that very well might be the case, and the best way to do things. for
100% string,
most
0% fluff.
scenarios. Yeah. Play this. And play this.
This'll be over
Spin
quick.
in a twirl and out. There's our
Hold
puppy
still.
to game.
Yep.
What'll
But
drop
yeah.
first? My bolts?
Twitter is weird.
Cheers.
Like, I definitely consider that as far as my like own Twitter feed. If people are following me on the Twitter feed, it is a way to guarantee getting notifications, and that's a good thing. But it also clearly could get a little busy. Like I don't tweet anything extra, and I could certainly see a case where tweeting something extra might be more useful. On the other hand, I'm not sure there's really a argument to use Twitter at all, and I don't know if real people use Twitter at all, or if it's simply always just fake people, celebrities, by which I mean celebrities, yeah.
100% string and 0% fluff.
Should have played this.
Oh, guinea pigs, where are you?
Watch as I wind and wind.
Still.
Yep.
I bestow upon you my lightning.
I don't know if there's any kind of good social media site that exists, particularly with just how people have gone with the pandemic and become increasingly divisive. I don't know if there's a social media site that ever had a chance of succeeding. Maybe the human race is just not as social as it thinks it is. That being said, if you'd asked me 3 years ago, is it crazy to not have like at least email, I would say yeah, totally. Everybody should have at least an email. You totally need it to communicate with people, but I'm not sure you do communicate with people via email anymore as much as you just use it to communicate with businesses and do password resets and get advertisements thrown in your face.
This'll be over
Spin
quick.
in a twirl, spin in a twirl. There's our puppy to
There
game.
we go. And yeah, I could definitely see a case for people just getting rid of email completely. Same way people have kind of gotten rid of using phones to actually call people and barely even use phones to text. Here will be a transition. I'll see if I can do this. Speaking of people who should not have used their phone to tweet or text, the Man-Eater studio, the Tripwire, which was the studio that made Man-Eater, which doesn't really make any sense. This headline could easily lose this part. The Tripwire CEO has quit following the backlash at his anti-abortion comments. Tripwire themselves, as a company, came out and said that his personal, he was tweeting or commenting personally on his personal opinion, and he shouldn't have done that because he, as a CEO, he is a 24/7, 365 representative, and I'm editorializing here saying this, but any CEO is a 24/7, 365 representative of a company. That's just part of the duty of being a CEO. I'm sure there are people out there that would wish that to not be the case. But yeah, that's just the case. And so it is imperative that
and relax.
his comments not affect the company, and it definitely affected the company in a negative light. So John Gibson has stepped down. He did this the day after.
My
So
beloved mother.
this all happened very, very fast. Which I kind of wonder at a certain point, did he see writing on the wall that he was going to get fired, and was this just the was this just a great exit strategy to potentially start a lawsuit and trigger a golden parachute or something and get out of the company? Or start contract lawsuits against their partners who are now saying that they are going to stop doing business with them. Let's see. Okay, do this here.
We'll cut you down.
Do this, I guess.
Where are you?
If I were
Thy little canary.
sleep,
The design fault lies with you. I am such a
Wow.
genius. Such a
I'm
good
surprised this is actually going to work.
This'll be over quick.
But yeah, I definitely
Hold still.
listened to the Bombcast, which there's really no reason to even listen to a Bombcast at this point. They have nothing to say. Like, Jeff Gerstmann, his wife is about to have another baby, so that, in retrospect, now kind of knowing that, might explain why he didn't leave Giant Bomb at the same time as the other. The remaining of the staff pretty much all left Giant Bomb at the same time. Could also certainly explain how he said he was upset with them for leaving, is that they effectively, whether they had a choice or not, did screw him over and leave him high and dry, needing that health insurance. And this is kind of a great example of why the health insurance should not be tied to an employer at all.
Buying access.
I can try and do some damage here. Okay. Leave it at that. But yeah, the Giant Bomb started. I'm sorry, I'm getting very distracted and I'm not talking. Well, this is very much how it's been going with the Binding of Isaac Rebirth too, is that I've been getting very quiet and just not being good at commentating and being a good commentator. But yeah, they started to kind of hate on the game Maneater, which maybe it's getting a little review bombed, maybe it isn't. Like that would be an interesting thing to also search. But yeah, there really is no reason to attack the game, which they reviewed and looked at and had no problem with before We're gonna go back through every creative company's history and look for evidence that fills our narrative that an entire company is evil is ridiculous. Nobody can live up to that kind of cancel culture idea, and I don't know how this isn't 100% a more polished, more professional form of cancel culture in a lot of ways, whether you agree with the opinion or not. It doesn't matter, really. This was the supposed to be independent journalist, video game journalist, news press, not being objective, not being not just reporting the facts and letting the viewer decide, but actively trying to push a narrative. Now, for the companies that don't want to do business with the other companies, that gets down to contract law. In a lot of ways, I think the default of all companies is that they don't want to do business with other companies, and it is then up to you as a company to convince the other companies to sign a contract and actually do business with you. And once you have somebody under a contract, if they're violating that contract, then you seek out remedies through lawsuits. And it really doesn't matter the opinion spouted. If I was one of the businesses doing business with Tripwire, and I saw the CEO post a pro-life or pro-choice opinion, either way, it doesn't matter. That is a CEO not being a good CEO. And I wouldn't personally want to do business or have my business do business with another business that has a CEO that is, just to put it simply, an idiot who is causing controversy and sticking his nose out to be chopped off, or sticking his neck out to be chopped off for no good reason. There's plenty of conservative people in the video game industry that I'm sure making direct payments to the Republican Party and anti-abortion groups, and they just stay silent about it. Perhaps they say that's out of fear, and perhaps it is, but I can't really say that they aren't putting their money where their mouth is, and that they aren't sincere in their beliefs.
This is not a warning. Termination protocol.
Verifying access.
But Tripwire's CEO, or former CEO now, going brazenly in that direction, that was a mistake. Okay. As for the actual game Maneater, it's on my wish list. It's overall polished, very positive. I was definitely thinking about playing it at some point. It always just kind of seemed to be a little too expensive. Yeah. This is the lowest it's ever been, is $23.99, and even there it's pretty expensive. And if we look at the graph,
Think strong and carry on.
you have 9 negative to 59 positive, 44 positive to 7 negative, 58 positive to 8 negative, 45 positive to 5 negative, 49, 51 to 14 negative. So if a review bomb goes from 5 negative down to 14, or if it goes from 1 negative to 9, that's hardly a review bomb at all. So I don't see any real ideas here. Here you have something from September 8th today. Very very short, overpriced game. It's not for the mildly funny commentary thrown in every now and then. The repetitive gameplay would be extremely dull. Aside from that, the developer is amazingly hypocritical and treats its employees like poop. Yep, so that might, by some crazy translation, be a invalid review in some people's minds, but not in mine. Like that seems very realistic and legitimate as far as what a review would be. Yeah. And see, it would be fairly crazy. And this is one of the reasons I think that the review system on Steam is better than any OpenCritic, Metacritic review or anything like that. Or Reset Era type reviews. It would be fairly crazy to spend $23.99 on a game to then give it a negative review and have to put in, let's just look at how long this person played. 18.5 hours. So, yeah. If this was done, you would have had to bought this game at like midnight on September the 8th. Or the day before. Have it run all night long to get up to that point. And then post your review. Unless you can just hack Steam and lie about how long your runtime has been. I feel like there is a growing issue of false claims of review bombing. Like one negative review that happens to mention that they're upset about something you did outside of the game does not mean you're getting review bombed. I think there's a case here of a lot of people crying wolf. And that is going to have to be addressed at some point, because we can't allow people to just claim they're the victim of a review bomb to put themselves in their own narcissistic mental space that they are in the right. And I would say in general, people are just showing their narcissism a lot more these days. Whether or not they've developed it, I'm not sure, but it seems much more apparent that there are people who are, if not true medically diagnosed narcissists, have adopted pseudo-narcissism as a behavior affect and are duplicating those actions quite a bit. Those mentalities. This is another story from Video Games Chronicle that I don't know if this really is news. And I don't know if this isn't maybe pushing too much of a narrative. A month later, Activision has put its logo back on Call of Duty marketing. Which they had said, and this is kind of the beauty of keeping everything internal, is Activision had said the reason why that one Call of Duty trailer came out right after the discrimination lawsuit was announced was because it was an artistic decision. More than likely it was just a knee-jerk reaction to try and distance Call of Duty from Activision. But let's say it really was an artistic decision. Clearly, it didn't accomplish anything, and they got just more pushback later of saying, oh yeah, this is just Activision trying to hide. And these kinds of decisions very possibly are being made by PR companies that are basing it on a lot of different thoughts. In one way, I would say Activision should have stuck with the idea of Call of Duty trailers as a stylistic decision, not putting any Activision logos in any of the Call of Duty trailers, and then Activision just said, coming out and saying, yeah, this was a one-time artistic decision. This isn't going to happen with every single game by default. We're going to take it on a case-by-case basis. That them not sticking to it now feels kind of pathetic. Feels like they know they got caught and then they're backtracking. But also, a bigger point to this, is this really news at all? Like, even if you try to spin the narrative of the lawsuit against them, which in all fairness, you could also make a claim that the state of California intentionally released news of this lawsuit right before a big announcement to possibly manipulate the stock market and affect the company, possibly to hurt the company. That is also an accusation you can make. And you could push that narrative just as much as you could push any other. But yeah, I don't think it's news. I don't think it really is news, and it really just feels like Video Games Chronicle is doing something we see Gamma Sutra formerly doing a lot of, which is just writing articles to push the same narrative over and over again when there's no new bit of fact or any reason to be writing a new article at all. At least GameDeveloper.com now, which was formerly called Gamma Sutra, at least on their Twitter feed, they just kind of retweet the old articles and republish the old articles instead of having someone rewrite a new article. A lot of this highlights the fact that the way in which games are written about do not make sense. There needs to be a way that you can have a salaried video game journalist write the articles that need to get written and then spend the rest of the time doing research, which in video game, in the case of video game journalism, also involves playing a lot of games, which inherently it seems like video game journalists just are not playing enough video games. As a YouTuber who plays a ton of video games, I never feel like I'm playing enough video games. I have no idea how the mainstream journalists who are putting out an article a week or more, 2 or 3 articles or an article a day, I have no idea how they could possibly be playing games on top of that. There's just not enough hours in the day.
And lies.
Everything was a lie. I'll make your taste buds quiver.
Okay.
And lies.
Oh, guinea pigs, where are you?
Okay. So we can do 6 damage extra. Moving on, the first footage of Pro Evolution Soccer free-to-play successors eFootball is receiving heavy criticism according to Video Games Chronicle. Some fans are unhappy on the series' successor is looking.
My life has purpose.
Video is now unavailable. Let's see if we can look at this video. Yeah, these guys look a little rough, and the animations and movements look maybe a little bit janky, but I don't know if Pro Evolution Soccer ever looked any better. And when you actually zoom out from that top-down perspective, it looks fine. This is one of those cases where a United Statesian is just not going to be the target audience for a soccer game, so it's real hard to know what you're looking for in a soccer video game, since you basically don't understand soccer at all. Yeah. My assumption and thought would be that your goal in a soccer video game would be to have less injuries and more faster gameplay, movement, interaction.
Tell me what to do with my size and strength.
Okay.
The truth will cut you down.
Darn it. Should have played a little bit faster. Should have evolved one of these and attacked, come to think of it. Yeah, looking at this trailer though, I'm not seeing anything that looks terrible. Just immediately. So, yeah. I am confused, to say the least. This should have been fused twice, which means now we can hit this, do this, and do this,
Will cut you down.
and we'll just hit that.
What adorable, ephemeral lives.
Video Game Chronicles says Ubisoft is giving away the PC version of Far Cry for free. Players can claim a copy through the Ubisoft Connect by September 11th. I guess the question though is, does this become a Steam account version? I think probably not. What is interesting about this thought in particular is people really didn't have huge love from Far Cry, like Far Cry 6 and Far Cry 5 or Far Cry 4. There's still a lot of love for Far Cry 3, but I guess they are not afraid of cannibalizing their marketplace by having people play Far Cry 3 right now and burning out, because it's a fairly big game. I can see people getting their fill of Far Cry just playing Far Cry 3 and not wanting to play the newest Far Cry game. Alright, well, this and this, did that and that. Then do this. There we go. Yeah. It doesn't seem to me like you get a Steam version of it though. So fine, I suppose, if you're fine using a different storefront, which more and more that becomes the situation, is that big companies are willing to give away free copies of their games if you go to their storefront and make a new account, basically. But then you have multiple storefronts, and the Epic storefront, once again, has not proven itself to be particularly worthy to have that kind of extra attention. Right. Okay, we need residents to activate. Can we fuse this? Yes, but need a rush. Okay. Let's just see what happens if we do this.
Battle mode activated. Battle mode activated. Sisters, battle mode activated.
Okay.
Accept harmony.
Get back in my toolbox, you obey me! This idiocy is exhausting!
Yeah, I don't think I'm going here. Yeah, Video Game Chronicle has an article here. Player Unknown says prologue will be quite boring, but will lead to something better. This is Player Unknown, the creator of PUBG, moving over to his planet-sized open-world MMO that he's working on with a different company. Let's see, we have a game on Steam here called Nightmare. Let's go through some of these games. That's a way I can like warm up and move a little bit faster. This is free to play, English only, doesn't look like anything of interest. Here we have Harvest Moon One World. Just because it has the name Harvest Moon, I think it deserves a follow, but looking at the graphics, it doesn't look particularly good. A farming sim, maybe for kids, for $50 is a tough sale. Plus, there's another $22 of DLC. So that seems like a lot. And that is kind of the problem, is the name Harvest Moon has been used more to sell garbage than it has been to make proper sequels that people are excited about. Here we have a game on Steam called Escape from School, which just looks like an escape room game of low polygonal form. Doesn't look particularly impressive. $3.99, English only. Being compared to Left 4 Dead and Castle Crashers. They still haven't figured that out. Here we have a visual novel called Hypoxia One Last Breath, which apparently is a world where people are dying because they can't breathe for one reason or another. That is a interesting narrative for a story. I don't know if interesting stories really get told in the form of visual novels. Free to play, English only. Seems like it might be a fairly short visual novel, but since it's free to play, I'll just say check it out if you're interested. The art doesn't look terrible. There's clearly a boob guy in charge of the animation here. Every image is emphasizing cleavage quite a bit, or boobs in general. So I guess we just, I'll just say check that out if you're interested. It almost feels like there should be a horror game around that idea. instead of a visual novel. That would make more sense. It is a little surprising we haven't seen a horror game where somebody just straight up has asthma and is constantly needing to run for an inhaler, or is having trouble breathing and hyperventilating. And that there might be gases that affect people's breathing more. The problem you run into with this is, the thing is, you don't have a good reason to counter the effects, or a good way to counter the effects of having breathing troubles, other than an asthma inhaler. You would have to kind of establish a world where you're constantly finding inhalers as kind of a med kit, and you're constantly using that as the gameplay mechanic. Otherwise it just would apply a negative effect, and then either that negative effect stays with you for the rest of the game, or it eventually goes away. In Binding of Isaac, you have like a pill called bad gas that will poison enemies for a brief time. They don't have any way to unpoison themselves earlier, and that would be fairly annoying if it was the player having that kind of effect happen to them. Let's see. Do this. And then get rid of that.
Where are you?
Begin.
Let's see, I guess
The design fault lies with
take
me. I'm
here.
such a genius.
I'll see you in purgatory.
Can't attack that, but can do that. Next we have Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt. There's basically 2 or 3 Vampire the Masquerade games that have been announced in the past couple years. This one kind of came out of nowhere. You can see it is reviewed mixed at 64%. It's an early access battle royale game with third-party account and third-party EULAs. Allegedly full audio in every language, which I kind of would believe that. There doesn't seem to be any in-app purchases at the moment, but so I don't know how they really think they're going to make their money. But also, I just don't know if this is the kind of game you would want to make a vampire-themed battle royale or experience. Because then it seems like what you're creating is some overpowered characters fighting other overpowered characters, and running and gunning and sliding and jumping off roofs. Of that, the jumping off roofs are the only things that naturally feel like a vampire ability, and the rest of it just kind of makes it feel like it is a standard hack and slash. When this first was teasered out as a teaser trailer, there was some question as to whether there would be vampire hunters versus vampires, but it seems very much like it's just vampires on vampires. I'm gonna put this on the following list, but in all actuality I could easily just ignore it now. Like, there's very little chance of it succeeding, starting off so poorly in that state.
You can bring change.
And that is a big ticket, or if not a AAA game, that is like a AA or single A game. I'd say at least a AA game. And yeah, not being received well. They did, I will admit, though, at least avoid the mistake they could have made, which would have been to have have a heavy focus on
The truth will cut you down.
This?
darn it. That they had a heavy focus on getting out before the release of
Everything was a lie.
the release of Back for Blood, because had the Vampire Battle Royale game come out at the same time as the Back for Blood game had come out, then there's a decent chance that they would have had even fewer people playing their game. Although, being free to play, I don't know how they're making any money anyways. Maybe it is solely just a low effort game, Battle Royale game, to help them develop a Vampire the Masquerade RPG game that they're still working on. I'm not sure if it's the same company even.
What'll pop first?
Here we have a game on Steam called Wavy Trip, which looks to just be Flappy Bird. 59 cents, English only. That does definitely highlight a difference there also, where you have a AA developer, as I would describe them, being willing to put out a game for free, and then a low effort asset flip developer instead spending asking for 59 cents. I would say I think the one asking for 59 cents probably deserves to be ignored more than the one giving away the game for free. Okay. Next we have Bus Simulator 21, which is already mixed, and I can easily dismiss a bus simulator game anyways. $34.99 is way too expensive. Third-party DRM, third-party EULA, English and German, full audio. Here we have a game called Milo and Magpies, which looks like a point-and-click adventure, which is rated very positively. To the point where, since I'm a sucker for visual novels, I can just go ahead and stick it on the wish list. It's $1.69, English full audio with several other languages. Yep. This might be one of the cases where an artist was able to hand draw and animate things. A real artist was able to hand draw and animate things and put it in a video game and make that really work. This Johan Schrift, the average playtime here is an hour and a half though, so it is asking kind of a really high price for that game, for that amount of gameplay time. And I think that really highlights where artists kind of can't really succeed if they are trying to make video game animations, and they should just stick to static images and comic books and comic strips or whatever medium is more accommodating their potential output rate. Which, yeah, you wouldn't ask somebody who is a animator who draws to work with clay and build all their art out of clay. And that is the same thing with video games. You shouldn't ask someone who draws to work in video games, which is, it's not just drawing a single image and spending 100 hours to make a single image look really good. It's doing 60 frames per second, maybe doing 24 frames per second, and then converting that to 60 frames. There's a big word with an I can't pronounce. Interpolating I think is the word. Or maybe you're even doing it as low as one frame every 6 seconds. Or, so, well, that would be, yeah, even at that, that's still more work than most animators would be used to doing, or could do in a reasonable time. Here we have a game called Blon, B-L-O-N, which, to me it looks like it's a platforming game. Yeah, an infinite runner, platformer. It is visually polished more than a lot of infinite runners. At some point, the goo ball slime that you're controlling seems to get more powers. So it's almost like a Rogue Legacy infinite runner concept. Interesting. $4.24, bunch of languages. I want to put this on the follow list. This oddly might have enough gameplay here where it makes sense, but probably doesn't. If we're just going to be honest, it probably does not. Let's see, speaking of Rogue, here's a game called Rogue Shift, which is just a top-down twin-stick shooter of no interest. Early access 1274. English, allegedly full audio. Here we have a game called Lost in Space, which seems to have no connection to the Netflix Lost in Space reboot or the original Lost in Space TV show, which they have been incredibly slow as far as finishing Lost in Space. And I don't know if that is just a case where Lost in Space on Netflix is one of their first original projects, and it is also one of their most visually effects intensive projects. And thus it had a lot more demands on it than, say, making another season of Lucifer, which was considerably less visual effects. As for this game Lost in Space, though, it looks like nothing of interest. $2.39, English and Russian. Here we have a game called Don't Hate My Music Taste, which seems to just be an asset flip first-person shooter. Maybe there's music playing in the background. $4.24, bunch of languages. Here we have a game called Marble Mage, which just looks like a low-effort marble game, which we haven't seen. Super Monkey Ball, I guess this is closer to a Super Monkey Ball clone than a marble game. We haven't seen a lot of clones like this, but also you can kind of immediately dismiss this. There's barely a belief that even Super Monkey Ball proper games are worth playing. I wouldn't be surprised if a Super Monkey Ball clone like this literally is just stealing the exact design and level layouts of previous Super Monkey Ball games, instead of even having to spend the effort to think of new quality levels. And I don't know how many quality levels can even exist for a game like that before people just don't care anymore. Here we have a game called Poly Racing, which looks like a low polygon racing game. Early access $4.99, English only. Here we have a game called Dream Cycle, which looks like it's some kind of first person shooter but also hack and slash game.
Completing termination sequence.
How does this really play? This is from the creator of Lara Croft, and I guess that is something that holds some names. Although there's always been rumors that the creator of Lara Croft was also a bit of a weirdo. But in all fairness, basing Lara Croft off of your sister, which has always been the rumor, isn't that big of a weirdo thing these days compared to all the other weirdo things that every other game developer has had accused against them, or so many other, not every other, but so many other game developers have had accused off of them. A slight leaning towards incestuous fantasies, which is the accusation, and thus drawing your sister, particularly with large, low polygon boobs, is hardly that big of a deal. You just have to go to like Pornhub and see that incest porn has become one of the top 10 tags for many years now. So, and again, that would just be cancel culture, to cancel a game before it even came out, or to say you weren't going to try a game before it even came out because of rumors around one guy, the creators. Most artists are weirdos anyway, so you just kind of have to live with it and separate the art from the artist. This is $16.99 English full audio. I'll put it on the fall list. So far, we're saying it's 85% positive. So this is a case where if this comes out of early access, if it's still positive, it goes on the wish list. I'm not really seeing anything right now that tells me that there's much of an experience here that's that unique. It might be the beginnings of establishing a new universe where you stealth spells and weapons instead of bows and arrows, and originally a lot more platforming in the Lara Croft games.
Smiles are the best medicine. A bear a day keeps the doctor away.
So yeah, at this point, Dream Cycle just has to be on the fall list. Next, we have a game called Metal Swarm Infinity, which looks like nothing but an asteroid. Galaga clone. $4.99 English only, that's far too expensive. Here we have two Synchro Hedgehogs, which doesn't look like a Sonic the Hedgehog clone. It looks more just like a generic Atari NES early era game. $3.99, bunch of languages, easily dismissed. Here we have a game called Ark of Loeth, which the camera angle is weird here and the visuals don't look polished. This white character stands, looks awkward certainly, at the angle it is in, and it doesn't stand out from the background as well as it should. Looks like it is basically a top-down twin-stick shooter with some RPG elements. $19.84 is an odd price. English, Czech, and Russian. I think we can dismiss that. Here we have a game called Viral Fever, which looks like it's a infinite runner platforming game. Which again, you're seeing elements here that would potentially make the game more of a game. But at a certain point, I don't know if there's a reason to have the infinite running aspect. That seems like that is the thing that ruins a game concept like this more than it helps. This is free, English and Turkish. Check it out if you're interested, I guess. But yeah, I would just much more prefer to be able to control a character and let them run forward and backward at my command. Here we have a game called Space Adventures. It's just a top-down twin-stick shooter. $5.99 English only. Here we have a game called Encased, sci-fi post-apocalyptic RPG, which is rated mostly positive, and must have come out of early access. $23.99 English and Russian full audio with a bunch of other language support. I don't think there's any way that this Diablo looking clone, which is what I would mostly call it, or Fallout clone, maybe is a better word. I don't have any way to dismiss this in my mind. I think this has to go to the wish list. Yeah. That being said, maybe I'll just decide I've played enough XCOM style games that in case it's just too low on the list. But I haven't played any XCOM style games so far, so that would have to be in some potential future. Let's go ahead and at least try for quick disconnects if we're gonna not really play. Yeah, we have a game called FGTEV Goozy, which that's a crazy name. Seems to me like it's probably an asset flip game. There's an attempt here, I think, to make a family-friendly first-person shooter where you're shooting monsters with like a ectoplasm gun. There's almost a question here as to why you would not put this in VR on top of that. You know, the weird goo monsters, the weird tentacle monsters, as a concept have mostly disappeared in the minds of kids. Like there's only a few shows I think that ever did that. I almost wonder if this is a tie-in to some cartoon that was going to be made. $5.99 English, full audio, bunch of other languages. There was like a Ghostbusters-like game where you sucked in monsters. I don't know what it was called though, that I'm thinking about. Maybe I am just thinking about the Ghostbusters game. And that is, in all fairness, this is doing the one thing that the Ghostbusters game really didn't have you do enough of, which is actually just sucking up the ghosts into your gun. Yeah, we have a game called Mana Go Round, which is just a match 3 spin the wheels game. No interest. $8.99 English, French, Japanese, and Chinese. French is an odd addition there. We don't see a lot of spin the 4 items around to make a match. Battle Chef Brigade kind of worked that way as a puzzle game, and well, that Battle Chef Brigade had other problems. I don't think that was the problem, but I don't know if that really is. If I was to sit down and think about what kind of match 3 style of movement would I like, whether that would be the style I would pick. Video Games Chronicle has a first look of Call of Duty Warzone's new Pacific map, if you're interested. I'm not, so I'm going to close this. Apparently LEGO is teasing a large buildable Super Mario question block, which I don't know what you do with that. Like, I wouldn't even be surprised if it is... Did they say it was buildable? Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if it is straight up a playset on the inside or just a storage set around this. I have to be careful. Nintendo will claim to own the copyright to this LEGO advertisement. LEGO should own the copyright too. Nintendo's just straight up lies and makes content ID claims on YouTube all the time. Yep. You've had up until these points these sets that you build that are much more minimal and a giant block I don't know what that does other than maybe give you a whole bunch of bad backgrounds or just give you a storage place to put all of your things. Lego in general has always had a problem with not really supplying a good way to display and store Lego sets. Most of them look fine just on a shelf and left alone on a shelf, but if you really want to get to the next level and you have a whole bunch of minifigs you want to show off, there's never been any kind of minifig display stand. So if this question mark block just opened up in the middle and showed off all the minifigs, that would have been great. Although they should have done that particularly when they were doing Lego Dimensions, because there was a ton of minifigs there. But yeah, a lot of the other sets are just kind of the smaller, more kid-focused sets of that are just like, here's a car you build, or here's something else simple you build. They don't really have any connective tissue to any of the other Lego series, other than if it happens to be in the Lego City line, it probably will work with other Lego City lines in the same scale. Everything tends to be minifig scale, but yeah. It has been a really long time since I've done a Lego set also. I have quite a few in a backlog, and this year has been kind of good because they haven't put out a lot of new stuff. They did just announce a like Fender Stratocaster guitar with guitar amp set that's fairly small and not that detailed. But I guess if you are big into guitars, electric guitars, and Fender Stratocasters in particular, that's out there, or it's coming. That being said, it is weird in a couple ways. One, that you can build it in black or red as far as the guitar body, and it's just like incredibly small. Plus it's just kind of out there. But in all fairness, Lego is particularly with its partners, it's gonna have to struggle to find more and more content as far as things it can make Lego versions of, because they have done every kind of building you could expect to ever see, probably 2 or 3 times over.
Is that how you treat a lady?
But yeah, I don't even know if that's really video game related. I guess it really isn't.
By your will, there's no other way. There's
The
no
previous setup, the NES and TV set, which I got and put together, yeah, that's a nice set, but it also is probably as far as you could have gone with that concept. And so maybe that's why they're going in a different direction and trying to have more of a focus on a giant Super Mario question block. What you're not seeing here is Nintendo bringing in any of the other characters. We're not seeing any focus on Metroid, which clearly there could be a tie into Metroid, even though it does have a gun in it. I'm sure Lego would turn a blind eye to that since it's a blaster. No Donkey Kong focus here. No Zelda focus, which that would have been the next thing to do, you would think, is bring out some of these other focuses. The question mark block almost implies you might do a Mario Party theme set, which, yeah, that would be weird. And it kind of would make sense too.
This is where I truly shine. Yeah, I love this job. Of course I do.
Moving on, MechWarrior 5 is coming to PS4 and PS5 later this month. Apparently there are over 420 Forza Horizon 5 cars have been officially confirmed, which frankly that seems like way too many cars even in a racing game. And I guess the question will come down to how many of those are just kind of reskins or slight modifications of the same car over and over again. See, this seems to be really focusing in on just a couple of cars as far as this image. Yeah. I could see like a 9 Dodge cars. It could be that there are 3 models of Dodges and then just 3 variants of those 3 models for like the sports package and the racing package and things like that.
I will protect even in death.
Alright.
Is that how you treat a lady?
Wait, what's this?
I guess you can check out the article if you're more interested. I don't know if the PlayStation announcement has happened yet or not, but if it did, basically nothing was said. I think it actually happens on Friday, so this would be before the PlayStation Direct. They have announced that they have acquired the ex-Wipeout developers Firesprite. They contributed to Playroom and Playroom VR. What's funny here is this Firesprite was established in 2012 by former members of Sony Interactive Entertainment Studio Liverpool after it was closed down by Sony. So in a lot of ways this is a smack in the face of Sony of Japan, or at least you can certainly take it that way. Whether you want to or not is up to you. But yeah, there's definitely a case here where Sony of Japan laid off and shut down the company, finding it not to be profitable, and now Sony of California, being in charge, has decided to rehire the people and undo that decision. And that's kind of an example of a very public decision that you probably wouldn't would have wanted to do. It also once again feeds into the idea that they are more focused on having businesses and offices outside of Japan than they are on having offices inside of Japan. At least that's how I would take it. It may not really have anything to do with that. It may just have been a very much money decision that they couldn't afford to keep the offices in store. Then Firesprite doubled down. Firesprite got developed from those former Sony employees. They doubled down. They became a much better, cohesive, efficient team. They gained a level of notoriety and success, and Sony has just decided that they want to bring them back to the team. I don't agree with that, personally. I think if you fire someone, you should fire them forever. There's just going to be too much of a too much history there. Like, you should really think about firing people and not flippantly fire people, but I've also leaned to the idea of just being very flippant and being very quick to move people along to their next career path and decision, because people in general tend to, whether they are economically desperate and can't afford to be fired, or they just are emotionally attached they tend to stick to jobs way too long instead of finding a better job themselves. But you can also do that very nicely and say, hey, you should start putting out applications. I'll give you a great reference. I don't think you're gonna best succeed if you stay here for the rest of your career. But almost never is it the case that a boss will really tell you that. But yeah, I also would say if there's good cause to fire somebody, you create so much drama in the experience of firing people, so much trauma in drama and trauma really, in everyone involved. It just doesn't make sense to bring them back ever. If I was a boss, like a CEO, and somebody was fired and I really wanted them back, I would have to fire the person who fired them. And I would have to, even if it was ultimately the CEO's decision, I would have to scapegoat it and say, nope, really it was this person, and the boss is out and we're bringing back the employee, and try and come back as the hero of the situation. Video Game Chronicles says Hideo Kojima has self-made a Death Stranding director's cut trailer to show off its new wide mode, which I guess that would mean this is just the exact same trailer of the mini trailers we had seen before. I would kind of just assume what really is going on there is he was mostly just playing the game in wide mode to recreate the trailer as it was. Death Stranding director's cut being perhaps the weird Japanese game to play is an interesting thought, certainly. Like, if you're only going to play one weird Japanese game, is Death Stranding the weird Japanese game to play? Or is there something better in a more interesting, like, or a more niche game like El Shaddai, or Deadly Premonition, or I'm sure I could think of a few more if I really thought about it.
But make it fashion.
There's no other way.
This is weird. There's a whole like racing mode. Yeah. So at some point later in the game, I knew you made roads, but like a race car element seems weird. I wonder if this trailer is gonna mention Conan O'Brien. Since he showed up in that game. Like, nope, it doesn't. Good. Conan O'Brien showing up in Lego Batman 3 really sucks. And it's not gonna make any sense, even in a couple of years, to most kids. Yeah, he really had no business to try to promote himself and show up in video games. And if anything, Conan O'Brien and a couple other low-tier celebrities showing up in games, while not really being actors and playing characters and just really playing themselves, are going to haunt video games of a certain era. And yeah, it really was just not something that should have ever been allowed to happen. Okay. Do we want to clear everything on the field now?
It's beautiful tonight.
You beckoned?
Yeah. Video Games Chronicle says Ubisoft has reconfirmed that Far Cry 6 will have a free next-gen upgrade. This just because they wanted people not to be confused, since there was confusion, or there was a 360 done around the free upgrade for Horizon Frozen West, or whatever the Horizon sequel game is. Yep. There is a point, I don't know if it really matters to anybody, but there is a point to make that Horizon Forbidden West should have been a free upgrade, because at the time it was originally announced, the release would have been deep into the launch window of the PlayStation 5, but there's been such scarcity, we're still basically in the launch window of PlayStation 5, and people that have gotten it up to this point are basically just beta testing the PlayStation 5 because the player base is just not there. And Sony would really like to charge people $10 to upgrade from PS4 to PS5 games. There is also a complaint, and a lot of this was talked about on Giant Bomb, and I guess that was the one sentence in the 2-hour podcast that actually has some valid points, is that if you're paying $70 potentially for a PlayStation 5 version of a game, why are you not getting the PlayStation 4 version included in that fee, when you can pay $60 to get the PlayStation 4 version and potentially $10 to upgrade to the PlayStation 5? And at that case, you have 2 games on 2 separate consoles. Whereas if you just buy the PlayStation 5 version, you don't get that. So there should be free downgrade options. If Xbox did that, there's probably plenty of people still out there that have Xbox 360s. So if you went and got an Xbox One or an Xbox Series S version of a Lego game, it would make a lot of sense that they would give you a free copy to your account of the 360 version of the game, or the Xbox One version of the game, and go back even 2 generations. And that really helps people that have multiple consoles in their house, the hardcore fans and supporters that might have multiple kids that want to play multiple games at different times. Even if you are only allowed to play one version of a Lego game at a time, being able to play it in 3 different places on 3 different consoles is still a very nice feature to add. And it really isn't realistic to expect someone to immediately trash their Xbox 360 and their Xbox Ones and get 3 Xbox Series S's and maybe 1 Xbox Series X's. Here we have a game on Steam called The Perplexing Orb, which doesn't look like anything other than a marble game. $2.99, English only. Here we have a game called The New World. New World, I guess is how you pronounce this. Looks like this is a kind of asset flip character creator, but in all fairness, looking at that character creator, you're flipping individual assets to work on a single body model, or 2 body models. But third-person virtual nightclub featuring live stream DJ performances is what it says. Yeah, if this was a nightclub, you'd expect a lot more people here. And it kind of feels like you're just customizing a character and maybe they'll dance around at most. Free-to-play, online co-op, English only. That seems crazy and not thought out as and definitely not polished. Can we do 4 damage? Right, we can do this. We can do this. We can do this.
You're in good hands.
Faster, holier!
We can do this.
The real battle begins.
Put your legs into each frame.
Protect even
Back straight, eyes forward. And that concludes today's sermon.
Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Placebo Love, which looks like it's some kind of strategy game / visual novel. It looks like there's oddly too much game here for what is, I think, a visual novel / strategy game. Yeah. Yes, Doppelganger Soulmates. Yeah, I just don't think there's a game here. $10.19, English only. I guess we put this on the follow list and see if it gets follows. I bet it never does. And then I'll just eliminate it from the follow list for being irrelevant. Here we have a game called Sin Unit, which is obviously a low effort for Ghost Hunter game. $15.99 English, allegedly full audio. Single player with online co-op, early access. Here we have something in Asian letters with the number 3. Looks to be a Chinese cell phone game, if I was to guess. Free to play, MMO, in-app purchases, Chinese only. Here we have a game Fill and Cross, Trick or Treat, which, yeah, I don't think I'd ever want to play a game like this. $2.99 is not terrible. Bunch of English, French, German, and Russian. Like, these Picross games, or Picross clones, aren't terrible by any means. It's just, I could literally do a spotlight, maybe, of one Picross game, or try to go all the way through one Picross game, but it would be incredibly boring and just procedural. More than anything, you'd just be following a procedure to fill in a picture. Here we have a game called The Dawning Clocks of Time, which looks like it's a slightly more zoomed in, slightly more visually polished RPG Maker game. That being said, there's seemingly a rather large inconsistency in the art styles and the screenshots, which we typically don't see. Usually every screenshot looks like it's from the same game. The actual trailer here shows nothing of interest. Like, this image and the slightly pixely space image feels very different from a top-down isometric image, which feels very different from a minigame image, which feels very different from an RPG fighting image. Yeah, if anything, this strikes me, and probably because of this screenshot and the little red here, almost like the NES Star Trek game, which had a few different gameplay mechanics and screens and kind of jumped all around. This is $6.79, single player, allegedly full audio. Here we have a game called Air Traffic Blitz VR, which looks like nothing of interest. Early access, $4.99, English, full audio. Here we have Tarragon's Symbol of Magic, which looks like a VR magic simulator game of no quality. Yeah. Well, you got a dragon, so maybe you've got a giant elephant. We may start to see a lot more hammer swinging, standing on your hind legs elephants in games at this rate. But yeah, $19.99 English only. Not really interested. Here we have a game called Night Hunter, which looks like a low effort, dark screenshot, first person shooter game. If you're actually hunting animals in the darkness, that's going to be pretty boring. And frankly, I think hunting at night in general would be fairly boring. But I could also see a lot of nocturnal animals being the pests you want to get rid of. Here we have a game called Power Trip, which looks like nothing of interest. 84 cents, English only. Here we have Earthguard Egypt, which looks like it's a VR stand in one place shooting bows and arrows. Kind of tower defense experience. There might be something to this idea, because we still have yet to see a really great version of the idea of standing in one place and shooting things. No, it doesn't seem like there's enough variety of enemies if that's going to be your main problem, and enough variety of gameplay mechanics. Free to play, English only. I guess check it out for the price. Here we have a game called Infinity War, which looks like it's a strategy, turn-based strategy game, I guess. Kind of looks like a tower defense game. $4.99 English and Russian. Let's see. Let's come over here and actually play.
Today we'll lift some heavy scriptures.
Here we have a game called Stationary Frontier, which looks like nothing of interest. Early access $3.99. Wow, and I can see the beginning of the end already, so we may be able to just end early. I'm not even gonna try to act on the pretense that we would try to do some faultless cleanup. I just want to be done. I want to get ahead so bad. We need to get through the news at this rate, though. So Gametsu says the time I got reincarnated as a slime, which is a anime, has its smartphone game Isekai, which means you got transported to another world, or it just translates literally to another world in Japanese. Isekai Memories for iOS and Android is coming to the West in 2021. This is a later evolution of the human who got reincarnated as a slime in a different world, and the slime eventually gets enough magical power and to turn himself into a more humanoid form. That being said, it's not really even the main focus, as I understand it, of the anime, that the slime is particularly magically powerful, as much as he is very intelligent and capable of helping this fantasy world come together and build a greater society. So, like, the slime very early absorbs this, like, dragon, and I think gains a lot of the power there. But also very early, he brings together, like, this species together with eventually all these other species, and they form kind of this united species, United States. And so instead of it just being fighting tribes of different types of monster fantasy creatures like orcs and dwarves and things like that, and wolves, he gets them all to work together and tells them how to build a better society. So in a funny way, it's crazy to call it a political anime, but it kind of is a political anime. Now, of course, it's an anime, so yeah, how political really is it going to be? Not that much, but it is the dawn of a new government type story. At least the anime is. Now the actual gameplay here seems to be more just about fighting, and I bet there's a lot of fighting that happens specifically in the anime too, to settle disagreements. But there for a brief moment you see him as his slime form, and you can see how the city just grows bigger and bigger, and the slime adds more and more of these monsters to work for him and fight for him. And I'm sure the smartphone game will be around that. I'm not sure if this is particularly the kind of game that is ever good on it. They're calling it a nation building 3D battle RPG. That's a good way to describe it. But I don't know if this isn't really just like Simpsons Tapped Out, where you're just gonna have a lot of timers and a lot of cooldowns, and you're gonna come in every day and do your dailies, and it's just gonna be very grindy. Potentially have a whole bunch of microtransactions in it that will make it suck.
No, the smiles
There we
are
go.
not free.
Let's see. Next, we have Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dai, A Hero's Bond, launches September 28th. This is also a smartphone game, and more in the Dragon Quest style fantasy telling. Maybe slightly more kid-friendly if you look at the outfits. I think Dragon Quest does try to keep it mostly kid-friendly, excluding the puff jokes, which are kind of not a big deal.
Be gone.
But yeah, once again, not sure these games. It kind of looks like it's an infinite runner RPG. Not sure if these games really have been figured out as far as how you translate that into a good experience, or a good video game experience. Right. This would return 3 if I play this. I could do this and heal and evolve.
There is not a soul without sin.
You were done for.
Punish the wicked. Spare the innocent.
Okay.
Let judgment fall.
Okay. Then we'll get rid of that one.
Looks like I'm up.
Well, that's too bad.
And then
A bear a day keeps the doctor away.
yeah, I think that worked about as best as we could. Gamatsu says Witch Spring 3 Refine, the story of Irudi, is coming to PC in Q4 of 2021. It's currently available on the Switch. I would be cautious about any game that came out on the Switch first, but I think that is going to happen slightly more. This looks to me like it's maybe a just standard RPG kids CG chibi characters. There might be a game here. This might not really have relevance though. There might be too many other fantasy games like this to consider. On the other hand, it might be a case where these chibi 3D RPGs are going to quickly replace these standard RPG Maker looking games. Whether that's a good thing or not, we may start to just see everybody who made a low effort RPG Maker game starts to make these chibi 3D characters instead. Like they're constantly iterating and trying to outdo each other, and that's good for the game industry in a lot of ways, but it seems to have just also highlighted that making a good RPG game is incredibly difficult, and there's still plenty of room for failure.
I shall give birth to a new world.
Let's see. Okay, well then you play this, and then you end the turn. Let's see. Harvest Moon One World is now available for PC. The Xbox One version is still without a release date. We had already seen that on Steam. Mega Man X Dive is coming to PC in September in the Southeast Asia territory, which means you could probably ship it over and play it in English in the West, but it doesn't. Typically when you see that, that does not mean you're actually going to see a Western release. Or if you do, it's going to be very much later or completely disconnected to a Southeast Asia release. Rockman, as it's known in Japan. X-Dive is not a game I recognize.
The future is what
Let's
we
see. Kunio-kun no Sangokushi Daio Zien Shugoi has been confirmed for the PS4, Switch, and PC. This is, I think, a new game in a long-running, more Japanese series of games. I think they're beat-em-up games. But maybe they're RPG games. This definitely, with this image, looks more interesting than what I was thinking it was going to be. They say that development is 65% complete. It's kind of ridiculous to even put a number on something like that. Like, you really don't know. There's no way anybody could know. There's plenty of times when I've worked on a program and I've thought, oh yeah, I'm 1 day away, I'm 90% complete, and then all of a sudden all kinds of problems and new issues or feature creep starts happening in my mind, and then all of a sudden I'm nowhere close to being done. And then also plenty of projects that really have no urgency, so I can just burner them forever. Yeah, speaking of projects, I really do think at this point, setting up a cell phone to play Kodi as a video, TV, music player, just general media player, way better if you have a spare cell phone. And it's not too hard to have an old cell phone that you don't want to pay for the service for, or the battery is fairly bad. But still has a usable screen and usable computer. Yeah. Whereas if I was trying to build the same thing, I could probably get a build of Raspberry Pi that would work, a Raspberry Pi build of Kodi, and get that to work. But it just wouldn't do that. It just, I don't think, would work the same way or as nicely. I think it would be a more sluggish experience, particularly to show video, just because of the low processor, and you still would need to build in some kind of screen, and the screen would probably be fairly small, and if the screen's not small, then you've got a really thick tablet. Yeah, I suppose a used tablet would also have been a potential device to, if you have an old tablet, to make media on that. That also would work. Right, well, get it.
Thus, the world ends.
You're a solid fighter.
So yeah, as much as I'd like to use Raspberry Pis in projects, there's definitely some scenarios where it's not the right answer. Maybe it will become the right answer at some point in the future, but I would love to see a Raspberry Pi Compute Module 4 that you could plug into a cell phone body that would feel like a real cell phone and just be maybe slightly thicker, and then you could have a device that is doing something, maybe not making phone calls, but still working and feeling in that same form factor. Yeah, I'd have to win quite a lot here to get these other daily quests done, so I suspect that's not going to happen today, but whatever. Moving on, Gamatsu says Hell Let Loose for PS5 and Xbox Series launches October 5th. I don't recognize this game. From Team 17. I would really like to find a way to center these videos automatically.
Is fighting and despair all you know?
I've yet to find a way to do that.
Family.
Let's see. Hell Let Loose looks uninteresting. If I was to reload this page, put the image down here, hit play, it would cut off the bottom 20 frames of the pixel and lock it there, and so that would be a problem. If I was to put it at the top, it would work fine. So that's probably what we would want to do, is lock it to the top. But ideally, I'd have some way for the page to recognize that there's a video here and center it. That seems like that should be just something in Chrome in general. Moving on, Komatsu says Alan Wake Remastered has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC due out this fall. Coming as a surprise to no one at all. So, yep, but it's official now. Eternia Noctis launches December 15th for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. This is a hand-drawn Metroidvania game. Is this one I've seen, or is this one new? Let's jump around a little bit. No, I don't believe I've seen this one. It feels, once again, more like a Castlevania game than a Metroidvania game. But, or a Metroid game. I think, frankly, at this point, Metroid Prime is more relevant than the original Metroid game, so I think Castlevania should just be called Castlevania clones. There has yet been explained to me an aspect that was in Metroid that was not in Castlevania games that would make a difference. It's just that I think you have two factions of people fighting to call it different things. Moving on, Gametsu says Toy Soldiers HD has been delayed to September 30th, plus there's 10 minutes of gameplay. It feels like this may have been the second or third time that game has been delayed. As a remake of an old game, that seems bad. Let's see, Call of Duty Vanguard multiplayer reveal trailer and screenshots are out. If you're interested in that, check that out from Gamatsu. Moon apparently is coming to PS5 and PS4. This was a 1997 released anti-RPG is what they're calling it. Anti-RPG is an interesting phrase. Let's see. Yeah. What makes a game an anti-RPG? This definitely looks weird. Has Onion Games done anything else on Steam? Dandy Dungeon, Legend of the Brave Yamada. Which, is this reviewed by anybody? 44 positive reviews. Blackbird has 66 positive reviews, so I guess if Moon came out and it had any relevancy, which maybe it doesn't, since they have only 679 followers. Although I don't know how many followers you'd even expect a company to have on Steam. But yeah, maybe Moon would push me into thinking about looking at some of the other games that they created. Gamatsu has the Famitsu review scores for issue 1710. Let's see. Bang Dream Girls Band Party for Nintendo Switch. It is called for Nintendo Switch. Was 31 out of 40. That's particularly low. Neptunia X Sinran Kagura. Ninja Warriors for the PS4 is given 32 out of 40. That's not great. And then WarioWare Get It Together got 33 out of 40, which is about an average score. I don't think anybody was really expecting too much from the Sinran Kagura games, though, so I wouldn't say I was particularly... I would be particularly surprised that it is just a average, slightly below average game. The bigger issue, certainly, as far as the Neptunia, Sinran, Kagura games, is we need to see reviews as far as, is there more lewd content that you'd expect to see in a Sinran Kagura game, or is it more, I guess for lack of a better term, family friendly that you would expect to see in a Neptunia game? Let's see.
A prayer a day keeps the doctor away. Predict wrong?
And
You were done for.
Put your legs into each prayer. Back straight, eyes forward.
A fitting end.
let's see, moving on. Cyberstep has launched a visual novel game brand, CS Novel Club. The first 2 titles will come out this winter. So, I don't really know who Cyberstep is as a company.
Stop!
Let's see. Seems like, yeah, fairly generic images so far of visual novel characters. Let's see. Gamatsu says Prinny Presents NIS Classics Volume 2 has been announced for Switch and PC, which I suspect these are just spin-off games. It includes Maikai Kingdom Reclaimed and Rebound, and ZHP Unlosing Ranger and Dark Death Evil Man. I wonder if possibly one of these spin-off games would give me an excuse to play something in the Disgaea universe without actually playing the Disgaea series, or if I should just cut my losses and just say I'm not going to play any of the Disgaea games. More than likely that would be the right move. One of these looks like they might just be a fighting game, which that would possibly work better.
Look to the zenith, for there I will rise.
Back straight, eyes forward.
So yeah, Maikai Kingdom Reclaimed and Rebound looks to just be a standard position placement Disgaea game, so it doesn't seem like there's anything different there. And then ZHP Unlosing Ranger and Dark Death Evil Man looks to be the same Disgaea style position placement game. So clearly the people who played Disgaea games really like that gameplay style, because there's seemingly no variety there at all. Gamatsu has the same article. Sony Interactive Entertainment acquiring Firesprite. Subdivision Infantry DX is coming to the PS5 on September 22nd. This looks like it is a space shooter, 3D space shooter, maybe closer to something like a Star Fox game than a shoot 'em up. Let's see. Flying around, shooting space games. Typically not the kind of games I want to play. That being said, maybe I'm having a weird moment, but I think I kind of would like to try one, and probably only one, of that style of game.
I'm already a proper lady, you know.
Back straight, eyes forward. Back straight, eyes forward.
I could have potentially evolved and gotten him down to 1 health, but I think at this point he's probably going to concede anyways.
Some immortal supremacy.
It won't be long now.
Yep, the subdivision infantry DX. I'm gonna put this on the follow list. $14.99, bunch of languages. Let's see. Gamatsu has Neptunia X Sinran Congra Ninja Wars launching October 26th in North America and October 29th in Europe. Here we can see quite a lot of collectibles you might be able to get if you buy the limited edition, or I guess you would get if you bought the limited edition. I don't know why I'm saying might, which yeah, probably also paying a lot for the limited editions. Neptunia games and Sinran Congra games both tend to be really expensive. Limited editions as more niche games.
What is this weird feeling?
Back straight, eyes
You're
forward.
a solid fighter.
Let's see. GameDeveloper.com has an obituary for George Mawle, M-A-W-L-E, one of the engineers behind the God of War's iconic Leviathan axe. Which, okay. At this point, it just seems like a lot of people are dying, and they tend to never really tell you what they're dying from, what they died from. Like, there is definitely a thought of air quality and just persistent chemicals that have been allowed to be put in paint and in products, just causing an increased rate of cancer. There used to be incredibly low amounts of cancer, and much of the increase of lung cancer in specifics was attributed to smoking and the cancerogens in cigarettes. But at this point, smoking seems to be fairly unpopular, and it seems like while we were focusing on legislating and regulating what goes into cigarettes, plenty of other companies were given the okay or allowed to put in all kinds of chemicals and everything else.
I hope you're ready to escort me.
So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to find a lot of things are causing cancer and were causing cancer, and we just didn't know about it. And that would be my guess, is we'll see a lot of people dying of cancer, if not that, then COVID, of course. Let's see, Game Developer has the same article, although in this case, GameDeveloper.com, I think, is slightly more direct about saying that he stepped down, whereas this is other people would definitely say he was forced out. It's kind of impossible to force out a CEO, but you can definitely try to put pressure on him too. The quote here in kind of tiny letters is, "The comments given by John Gibson are his own opinion. comma, and do not reflect those of Tripwire Interactive as a company, is what the now temporary CEO or person in charge, left in charge. Yeah, he's been replaced by Tripwire co-founder and vice president Alan Wilson, who's been named the interim CEO until the company can appoint a permanent successor. Yep, that really is an example of just stepping into controversy for no good reason. I can't imagine what he thought was going to happen.
I'm a prisoner of this world's whims.
But yeah, people seem to do that. And then we're back to GameDeveloper.com once again, pushing kind of a narrative. The real news here, the fact of report, is Ubisoft has named a new CCO. The second part of this sentence has no business being here. A pro-worker group bemoans a lack of transparency. Yeah, there's no reason to put that into the story. In fact, any headline that is comma but is two different stories. You have one story that would say Ubisoft has named a new CCO, and that would be just a few paragraphs, particularly in GameDeveloper.com, which often makes just 3 or 4 sentences on an article. And then if there actually was something new to report, then you would make a second article that says Program Worker Group bemoans the lack of transparency in Ubisoft, and then you push your narrative here and you put even more text than you would see in almost any other GameDeveloper.com article. And I'm not really looking for more text in a GameDeveloper.com articles anyways, because I'm basically just skimming the headlines anyways, and I think that's how most people read most news. Life is Strange developer Dontnod will make remote working a permanent fixture, according to Game Developer. I think this had already been announced. But yeah. That's fine. Good. I think we'll see a lot of that happening in game development in general. Game Developer has the same story. Persistence VR development team Firesprite has joined PlayStation Studios. Don't need to really talk about that. There really is nothing to say about that. Anyways, Stardew Valley has sold over 15 million copies in over 5 years. See, this is much more in line with a standard GameDeveloper.com article is. You have one sentence, and then another sentence treated like a paragraph, then another sentence treated like a paragraph, and then another sentence treated like a paragraph. Some of these sentences all have commas and ands in them, so you could have broken them out into smaller, shorter sentences. And then you have what is probably just copy-paste description of Stardew Valley that's used in every article that manages to make one really long run-on sentence with no period at the end. But yeah, that's typically the level of facts that need to be reported and the level of news that needs to be talked about. The outsourcing giant Virtuos, VIRTUOS, has netted $150 million to accelerate growth. This is a Singapore-based company, and I guess they are outsourcing their effort to help develop video games for other companies. And so that name may be more recognizable to people in the industry than it is to me, since it isn't recognizable at all to me. Let's see. Here we have a game called Splash King Tournament, which, yeah, it doesn't look like anything of interest. $23.74 English, allegedly full audio. That's really expensive. Here we have a game called Flufferfurt and Friends, which looks like nothing of interesting. And look, they made this with Movie Studio Pro. Can't even learn to use OBS or some software that doesn't put a watermark on your video. $24.74. Really, really expensive again. Wonder if this is the same developer putting several really expensive games on this. Here we have a game called Dull Grey, which looks very minimalist. Maybe I could do something, could consider this. $3.99, English, Spain, Spanish, and Russian. I'll give this a follow, but it seems like it's kind of a minimalist visual novel.
Fitting end.
Let's see, sorry, went quiet there. Here we have a game called Rootin'. I was closing tabs, which seems to be a Lovecraftian, maybe point and click adventure game. There might be something here, but the problem is it looks really dark and dull. And I'd like to see actual gameplay elements. This animation style seems interesting, but yeah. Question is there really a game around that? $3.99, single player, English and Russian. I'll give it a follow. Here we have a game called Neon Depth, which looks like nothing of interest, for $1.79, English only.
No!
Here we have a game called Chicken Cannon, which looks like nothing of interest. Like projecting a chicken out of a cannon is kind of an interesting mini game, not something that you'd want to spend a lot of time with though. $3.19, English, allegedly full audio. Here we have Boulder Dash Deluxe, which even if this is an official Boulder Dash game, I don't think there's enough relevancy to play a modern version of Boulder Dash. $14.99 is way too expensive. Whole bunch of languages. Yeah, I'm just gonna immediately dismiss this because the gameplay in Boulder Dash is just not that good. Let's see. Next, we have a game called Gesture King, which is apparently an LGBTQ+ dating sim visual novel. Seems to be mostly just a visual novel. Maybe you have some other options. Branching paths. $17.99, English only. Guess we can put it on the follow list and see if people are interested. I bet it never gets even 30 reviews. Monolith is listing several jobs if you're looking to work for Monolith as a advanced software engineer, cinematic director, advanced software engineer, graphic system, people partner coordinator, lead artist, and so on and so on. There is 2 pages here. For someone who is just a gamer, though, I think that probably implies a good indication that I think that is a good indication that they are in development and making a game. What it also, I think, tells you is that there's a decent chance that the Warner acquisition is not going to affect them for the short term, but in the long term, certainly it will. And see, that's kind of the problem here is Warner Brothers also owns so many other things that video games is not their big focus. They own like Toonami, CNN, Warner Brothers TV, TNT's, apparently some Japanese label, Crunchyroll. Cartoon Network, CNN, TNT, HBO Max. Cartoonito, I think, is yet another brand. A lot of these are just kind of the same brand that end up on the same channels. And they were, I think, previously owned by AT&T, but I think they were just sold out from AT&T.
Not enough business. It looks like I'm up.
I am a prisoner of this
But yeah,
world's ways.
seems like we can expect at least one more game from them before things start changing a lot. But who knows? It could be they also hire a bunch of people and then all of a sudden all those people get laid off.
Both fleeting and eternal.
Here we have a game on Steam called Panda City, which looks like nothing of interest. $14.99 English and German. Ed Boon, the co-creator of Mortal Kombat Injustice, put out a Injustice animated movie trailer that you can check out. I don't want to get content ID'd, but apparently we are actually going to see an Injustice animated movie, although it could be a 2-hour long movie and it doesn't lead to any kind of longer series or anything.
I pray that you will be freed from suffering.
It is direct to DVD basically. It's not even showing up in theaters. I don't even know if there really is enough story there for an Injustice continuing movie series or comic book series. Yeah, we'll hop into this, but we may actually concede a game. Gamatsu has a Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl gameplay videos, which that certainly will be helpful as just really explaining how much of this is just Smash Brothers and how much of this is just
Prepare for defeat.
is doing something different. So far, it looks to me like it is 100% Smash Brothers. And it looks fine. And that works, particularly if they release it on PC. Because we know Smash Brothers is highly unlikely to not come out on PC. It would be very interesting if Nintendo did, in that one case, all of a sudden release Smash Brothers on PC just to combat any competition. But, yeah. There's definitely weirdness here, though. Like Nigel Thornberry, not a character I really relate to. SpongeBob SquarePants, not really a character I relate to. And the number of characters is going to be fairly low. You clearly take the same amount of damage and get thrown off the edge of the screen. It is just 100%. 100% Smash Bros. I don't even know who Lucy Loud is. I know Cat Dog. A lot of these characters I barely recognize though because I did not watch any of these cartoons. And Nickelodeon cartoons in general tended not to be particularly good in my opinion. And at that point I was probably old enough that I was watching anime instead. Or maybe I wasn't old enough and I still was watching anime. Take your pick. Here we have a game on Steam called Big Klondike Classic Solitaire. Kind of crazy to potentially just think about having a generic solitaire game on Steam. It's free to play with $4.24 donations. There's no in-app purchases. Yeah. Don't think there's anything wrong with this game. It's not visually polished, sure, but it's free. And if you just want Klondike on your Steam account, this may be the solution. They're comparing it to The Witness and Clue, though. That's not good comparisons. And then more comparisons down here that aren't really comparing it to any other kinds of solitaire games. Let's see. THQ Nordic, what did they have to say? That they are currently drafting and then all the announcement tweets for next week and can't wait to share them with them. So THQ Nordic is about to announce a whole bunch of games, which is not super surprising. GameDeveloper.com says Jam City has acquired the mobile studio Ludia for $165 million after record investment. And then GameStop sales have jumped 25% once again in the second quarter of 2021. So yeah, those crazy GameStop stonks are people still investing in GameStop and trying to stop people from shorting it, I guess. And in all fairness, I think we are getting much closer to the actual evaluation of what GameStop as a company should be versus its devalued shorting evaluation that it had. But it's really questionable as to whether anything's going to change, or if at some point a lot of people are just going to pull their money out of GameStop and then GameStop will just be back to where it was. And it's not like GameStop has done anything to really embrace a new business model and embrace profitability better. Here we have a game on Steam called The Durka, which just looks like a low effort visual novel, Russian joke game if I was to guess. This animation style is incredibly simplistic, so I don't think I could play any game like this. This would have to be almost a joke animation style from one scene, not the entire game. This is free to play and Russian. And then we have a game called Anti-Science Brigade, which just looks like an RPG Maker garbage game for $8.49, English only. Alright, let's play this.
I will rise.
And with that, that is all the tabs I had open. So I'm now just going to go through my Twitter feeds and see if anything new happened. And then I'm just going to call it a day. Particularly when we start late, it makes a lot of sense to try and finish as fast as possible. And at this rate, it looks like there is not going to be anything new. Yeah. It is 24 hours, 5 hours ago, that the PlayStation Showcase begins. So, yeah, the PlayStation Showcase is happening in 19 hours, roughly. And if they are announcing the acquisition of a company ahead of that, that does make me suspect that they may have a lot of other news to announce. The level of quality of that news it will be debatable, certainly until we see it, though. Yep. And let's just finish out this game in silence. Like, sure, I could come over here and we could start looking at like F1 2019 as far as games that are on the fall list. I guess what I'll do for racing games, since this seems justified, is I'll put it on the wish list, and then I would probably look up and see if there was a 2020 version that's better, or a 2021 version of Formula One racing first, particularly since you know there's a lot of licensed cars. Like, see, F1 2021 is also available, so it would make a lot more sense to play 2021 than it would to play 2020 or 2019. Yep. And I would have to just get 2 more victories in general to get those daily quests done. And I'm not planning on playing off screen. So with that, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.